Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Great. I know you're like post-lunch right now, so you may be slumping a little bit, but we're going to wake you up. We're going to wake you up. Everyone looks fabulous. And I am so grateful to be here with this expert panel. So I'm first just going to ask each of our panelists to go down the line and introduce themselves and tell us in that introduction how you would describe your workplace culture. I'll start with you, Deborah.
Hi, I'm Deb Merkin. I am CEO and founder of Gift Card Partners. What we do is we sell and market a engage to reward platform that businesses come into and can order gift cards. We can customize them, etc. So, and workplace culture is one of the most important things to our company. It has been since the beginning. Making sure that everybody is, I would say, happy is important. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Matt Stone. I'm a lawyer turned entrepreneur and management consultant, and I am really proud to be here on behalf of Attune, my partner company, an intrinsic motivation company. And I'm really close with that company. They're like family to me, and I can really say this from my heart that Attune is a company. You said, how does you describe the culture? Very much honoring the individual and driven for performance at the same time. And I think having that balance, it's a very, as we all know, that's a really difficult balance to hold. And I think Attune is a company, and why I'm proud to partner with them, because they actually practice what they are what they say they are. You know, the audio matches the video. So I am really excited for this conversation. I'm here with great panelists. Great to be here.
Thanks, Matt. Amina?
Thank you. My name is Amina Lobban. I'm head of culture, engagement, and HR business excellence for global manufacturing, supply, and quality at Takeda, which is the largest division within Takeda globally. Takeda is a top 10 pharmaceutical company, and where our culture is values-based. And we really live that culture through our mission, which is better health for people and better future for the world. I think our focus on the people we serve, our patients, and our people really comes through and has really created an inclusive environment for everyone where we feel like, for me personally, I feel like Takeda is very inclusive and I can really bring my whole self to work and feel like I belong there. So I think that's really key to who we are.
Hi, I'm Alexis von Kunes-Newton. I lead the learning and development and performance team at Wayfair, which we call Global Talent Development. Wayfair, as hopefully some of you are customers of Wayfair, we're an e-commerce home goods company based here in Boston. And I would describe our culture as very risk tolerant, innovative. It's a place where people can really be challenged and learn and grow because we're always trying new things and, again, willing to take risks.
Hi, I'm Jackie Fearer. I'm from Iron Mountain, formerly in communications at Fidelity Investments for 25 years, and I see some of my old colleagues here. Iron Mountain is a fascinating company. You would think of us as storage and digitization, but what we store and digitize would blow your minds. So being head of culture and engagement communications at Iron Mountain is a really cool thing. Like every single day I learn what we have and I say, no. Our culture is, I would say, because we're in 60 countries, we speak every language, and so we learn every day from each other. It's really nice when meetings don't start right away because we're learning. My business partner is in Istanbul, which was a really smart idea because we work 24/7, right? When she's up, I'm not. But I would say that the best thing about our culture is that we learn from each other every day, things that we would never have learned otherwise.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you all so much. We have a beautiful panel here this morning. So Amina, I'm going to come back to you and pose this question of how workplace culture is shaped at the organization. Because we often think, right, that it's everyone at the top who is establishing this, but of course it takes the people who are all throughout the ranks of the organization to maintain that. So how would you say it works at Takeda?
So I think at Takeda it's both. So we are a Japanese company, and so very traditional. And at the top, our culture is shaped, or our mission and vision are shaped by Takedaism, or what we call Takedaism. And he's laughing because he used to live in Japan, so he knows quite a lot about Takeda, I think. And so that's underpinned by integrity, fairness, perseverance, and honesty, with integrity at the core. And then at the top levels, we really see the top leadership just demonstrating our, I guess what we call our strategy, or the way we put that into action. It's through patient, trust, reputation, and business, in that order. So we consider the patient and trust, because we're a Japanese company, those come first. And so that is put into action from the top. From the bottom, I think because of our values and our values-based culture, we attract employees who align them, who feel like they are aligned with that culture. And really, I would say in the last few years, we've seen our employees really step up when it comes to DE&I and belonging, and really looking to create that inclusive culture. And so pushing that from sort of a grassroots level with our employee resource groups, et cetera. And so when you create that space for yourself, or when you find that space for yourself, you tend to create that space for other people. And so I think that it sort of had a ripple effect through the organization.
And Deborah, what about at your organization?
I think we have worked very hard in the last year to build the management team so that everything now goes from the top down. But what I learned most is not always from the management team. Everybody has their part and their contribution, and they should be recognized for that, and in a place to grow, basically.
Mm-hmm. Matt, would you say that's the same for Attune?
Yeah, I made reference earlier to audio matching the video, and for me, I mean, culture is one of those things we can talk endlessly about because it means everything, which means it can mean nothing. But we
got to talk about a nothing culture. I want to know more about that.
Yeah, I mean, well, we can be talking past each other, right? Because we have our own definitions, and I don't know. For me, in my experience, and things I picked up at other conferences from other professionals, it's like first of all, it starts with trust. It's like if I can trust that I'm at an organization where the leadership may not be perfect, because we're humans, but is doing what they say they're going to do to the best of their ability. And I think Attune does that. I know the CEO very, very well. And so the audio matches the video. And then the ability to talk about things when they don't go well without the fear of retribution. And I love the learning and development thing. It's like we're here to learn and grow together. And that's really what it's all about. That's all we can ever do in life. It's progress, not perfection, for all of us. So, all of this resonates with me, and I can say firsthand that it's the same for Attune and for other organizations that I'm involved in.
So, at Iron Mountain, it's not top-down or bottom-up, it's across, and that's because we decided that culture is what it feels like to work here, and then it's on everyone. Right? Whether you're a people manager, whether you're an employee, whether you're an executive, whatever you are, it's on you, because if it's what it's like to work here, then you can excel at it, or you can not take that opportunity, and that tends to erode your culture in so many ways, starting like right there locally. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And I understand, Jacqueline, that you all did some recent employee surveys, right, to get a better understanding of how people may or may not be fitting into the culture. What did you learn from that? Tell us about that.
So I get so excited about our employee survey that it's kind of sad, really. So I'll try to tell this really fast.
That means you know you're the people who are working with you well. That's good.
Yeah. So 2.5 years ago, we looked at the employee survey that we'd always used, and we saw that there are a lot of words that don't resonate with people. And so, when you take a survey and you're like, are they trying to trick me? That kind of ambiguity, things like that. So there were words like obsess over our customers. And I said, obsess is not even a good word in North America, right? When you use the word obsess, it's not good. So if you have someone in Singapore or China who wants to please the CEO and they look up the word obsess, it's not going to go well. Another term was stretch goals. So 20,000 of our employees are frontline. They're in warehouses, they're driving trucks. And when it said, my manager allows me to have stretch goals. That's very different from, you know, stretch goals that you have if you're professional. So we parsed, my partner and I parsed every single word to make sure that they knew who we were talking about. Like, how do you feel day to day? Well, do you mean my manager? Do you mean my organization? Do you mean my company? Like, we made sure that everything, there could be no question. And then what we did was we asked one subjective question, which was amazing, it turned out to be amazing. We said, if you could tell the CEO one thing, what would it be? We got almost 10,000 comments. And there were things from the lights are out in the parking lot, there's no coffee in the kitchen, things like that, to, you know, big things like we need to know the strategy better. But what happened was, and then some people would say, I don't even know why I'm answering this because nothing is ever done. Well, you better believe those parking lot lights were put in, the coffee was right. One of them was, there's a closet in our building that's never been opened, nobody has a key, we don't know what's in it. Right? So our head of operations.
You said the survey was 2 years ago, right? A few years ago? So have you found out what was in the closet since then?
So that survey was last fall, and our new one is about to begin. So we'll be able to see, right? So those were low-hanging fruit things that our head of operations got to immediately. And that was such a great thing for people to see.
And was that shared with other employees?
So we gave a report to every head of every business. They saw all the comments. I had to read all 10,000 of them. I promised legal I would. I didn't think it was going to be that hard, but it was like, took me forever to get through them. And some of them you go, what? And some of them you go, oh, that's never going to be fixed. That's never going to be fixed. But we will find out this year, you know, what the thing is, we made leaders action-oriented. As soon as they saw the reports, they had to start improving on those things, which is why we're really looking forward to results next time.
And Alexis, I want to come to you because when you were describing Wayfair's culture, one word that you mentioned was risk tolerant, right? Which it can be scary because when people are taking risks, there are a lot of unknown, but it also is where so much creativity is bred. So how would you say that Wayfair makes it safe for people to take risks?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think building off a little bit of what Jackie said, we do try to, and we do twice a year, we do what we call voice surveys, which are our employee engagement surveys. And we try to understand, do employees feel psychologically safe? Do they feel comfortable taking risks? We ask questions about whether they have a sense of belonging. Can I come to work feeling like I don't need to hide a part of who I am? Those questions are all incredibly important for us to understand. Are we creating an environment where people can learn from their mistakes, where they feel comfortable speaking openly, sharing ideas? And where we might see low scores either for a particular demographic or for a particular team or organization, we dig into that also through our sort of open text questions. And there's a ton that you can dive into there and a ton of information you can get from those open text responses. We always ask, what's one thing you value about your role or your team, and what's one thing you would change about your role or your team? And then if we see that there's a particular area that we're trying to improve, survey over survey, cycle over cycle, we might ask an open text question specifically about that and ask people to elaborate. But I think those are incredibly illuminating and help us understand what are parts of our organization, again, where we either have a specific demographic of people, folks in our front lines versus in corporate roles or in tech roles, who feel like they can't come to work without hiding a part of who they are, or they don't feel comfortable making mistakes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in terms of recognition and engagement based around that data that you are collecting, how does that work? How do you essentially reward, right, and give people a hand clap for when they take a risk, or when they take a risk, or when that turns out to go really well?
Yeah. So at Wayfair, we have a set of what we call people principles that sort of describe how we operate and how we operate at our best as an organization. And basically they describe how we work as an organization. And we have a recognition platform that ties to those 9 people principles. So you can recognize someone for innovation. You can recognize someone for delivering results with agility. You can recognize someone for being customer focused. And so that helps us sort of recognize those moments. You can choose to do that either publicly or privately. And there are a lot of ways that within teams, people sort of build off of that recognition platform to then recognize each other in all hands meetings or town halls or things like that. But we always try to tie it back to our people principles, which sort of exemplify that risk tolerant environment that we have.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And Amina, at Takeda, I mean, is recognition an important part of helping people feel like they belong?
Yeah, it's very interesting what she was saying, because I think we have something pretty identical, except we call them leadership behaviors. And we celebrate points that are tied to the leadership behaviors. So we do pretty much the same thing. And what they changed, it used to be that we give points, and so employees are able to use their points for something that suits them. So whether you're into camping or travel or purses or whatever you want, you're able to do that globally. So that's how we do that sort of recognition. But then, our end of year process or our end of year review is also tied to our leadership behaviors. And so we've transitioned to descriptive performance assessments versus giving people ratings. And so then your compensation, what you get, is then tied to your descriptive performance assessment, which is focused on what you did and how you did it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow, that's exciting. Okay, so how many points do you need to take a trip all across the world or something? I'm just curious.
I don't know if they have that, but the bag that I came with, I use my points to buy my work bag.
Okay, yes ma'am. Good for you, Amina, that's right. So Matt, we know that technology has become ever more present, especially as we've emerged and are still dealing with the lingering effects of the pandemic. What do you think is the opportunity for technology to help us build better workplace cultures?
Well, it has a huge role, although I go back to my early Silicon Valley days when I was taught by my mentors, Matt, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And back in those days, in my early 20s, I was like, yeah, let's make it do this, and then we could add this feature. And it was like, you're missing the point. What are we trying to accomplish here? I'm reminded of a story, and actually to build on what some of my fellow panelists have said, I have a colleague named Mark who's worked for me for a number of years, and he's a really great guy. And he asks way too many questions. And I get a little tired. I'm like, isn't it obvious? But it isn't. He keeps pulling and wanting to go deeper and deeper. I'm like, man, managing this guy is like, I would say pulling my hair out, but wait, that's his fault. So I love the guy genuinely, and I respect his skill set, but it really was concerning. And then actually, I'm partnered with Attune, so I had him take the Attune assessment. And his number one motivator is feedback. And what he wasn't getting enough of was feedback. For him, being recognized, AKA being seen, starts with giving him meaningful feedback about how he's doing, both praise and constructive criticism. Probably more than any other thing you could give him, that one thing would make him feel the most valued. And so even though he still asks too many questions, because of the technology delivery system and the methodology that's sound, I had better data to understand another human being who's not like me a little bit better and give him a little bit more of what he needs to feel recognized and respected. And I think that's how technology, it delivers things in a meaningful way, but we still have to be mindful about all the other pieces around it. It's not the only thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Deborah, I'm going to ask you a little bit about that as well, because, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm going to tell you that I don't think I do think that I've listened to Matt, and he's got a really good point. But because I manage a smaller company, and because one of the things is to make sure that we listen to everybody in the company, and to give them constructive feedback, but also making sure that they're engaged at all times. Because it's a smaller company, no one can go on vacation without somebody taking their place. Everybody has to have an SOP, which is standard operating procedures for their job, except for me, of course. But anyway, and so I think it's very important to just listen to your employees and understand who they are and where they're coming from. And to Matt's point, maybe you can do that through a test.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like what you're saying is like sometimes, even though we have this reliance on technology, there are some things that can be lost, right? When we are only working in a remote setting.
It's the people relationship. It's saying you did a good job, and I appreciate what you're doing. We could do it better if you told me blah 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 blah. So we can make that something new, whatever that is. But it's really saying thank you and knowing that we're a virtual company too, I should say that. So making sure that you touch everybody is really important. We're all over the country. Not the world, but the country.
Amina, even with those limits, what have we learned about how having this hybridity in our workplaces, how that enables us to allow everyone at our workplaces to feel a sense of belonging, sometimes in which maybe that does require them, right, to not be in the office, because for some people we know the office is not always a comfortable or a safe feeling place.
Mm-hmm. So as Alexis was talking about belonging before, belonging is really developing or creating an environment where people feel like I can be who I need to be at work. People understand the challenges that I have and I'm accepted for that, and then I'm valued for the work that I do when I'm here. We have, because of how our organization is set up, we have a combination of employees who are hybrid workers, who are asked to come into the office 2 days a week or more if you would like to. And we do have people who choose to do that. And then we have on-site workers in manufacturing who were on-site through the whole pandemic, right? So they never were off-site. For our on-site workers, or our hybrid workers, so again, the request is 2 days per week. But really focusing on meaningful connection. So are you coming in for in-person meetings, face-to-face time? Are you coming in for, we have several, every month we have community days. Sometimes I go in, or I'll go to the Cambridge office to meet someone for lunch, and then I'll have a couple other meetings because I'm there. And so that's been our focus for hybrid workers, and really having people, creating that flexibility for people, right? So that they can live their life and be successful at work at the same time. For our at-site workers, most of our sites have site engagement committees. So we have a site in Lexington, Massachusetts. They have a site engagement committee, and they're really focused on empowering employees and having them understand that they do have a voice. So they're focused overall, well-being, DE&I, as I spoke about before, but we also have values ambassadors that are linked to our ethics and compliance team. So anyone can go and voice a concern. I think it was similar to what Alexis was talking about. If you have a concern, or you can go to this person and share your concerns with them, and that is trickled up through our ethics and compliance. And they're someone who you work with. So it's not like it's necessarily someone in leadership. It might be a manufacturing supervisor or someone in quality who's also kind of working on the floor with you. And so we work really hard to create that sense of belonging and engagement, no matter if you're hybrid or if you're at site.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Jacqueline, has that been an element of when you've talked about how you all have really listened to your employees? Has that been an element of what you're doing as well?
Yeah, so a lot of what Matt said. So how many of you were here last year when Marcus Buckingham spoke? Wasn't he awesome? So he started speaking and he said, he's pointing at us and he said, if you're a manager and the first words out of your mouth when you meet with your employees is not how are you doing, then you should not be managing people. And he wasn't kidding. He was really about that. And so for me, it starts with the people manager, right? And then the other thing is that people don't, so again, because there's so many so many frontline employees, they don't really get communications. Like they have a huddle every morning, right? And so I say to them, I love talking to the frontline employees, and they get all dressed up, you know, because they think their corporate's meeting with them, and it's like, and a lot of them, they call themselves drivers, but they actually are professional archivists from museums and things like that, but they don't want to get into it because they don't want you to know what's in the truck. But what's in the truck is like invaluable, right? So they just say, yeah, I'm a driver. But I met with some last week, and there are 3 of them, and I said, and they were managers, and I said, what do you do to keep up a sense of belonging when you have the huddle and then they just get in the truck and drive off? Right? And then they go home. So one of them said, well, I make sure that in our huddles that I praise someone at least once a week, and I call out the kind of behavior that I want other people to model. So I will say, you know, congratulations on whatever it was you did. Thank you so much. That's, you know, goes with our values. The second one said, oh, I have them do that for each other. So if you notice that someone on your team, you call them out and say something good that they did. So the third guy was sitting there like, I don't want to do that because the water will spill, but he has his arms folded, and he says, postcards. I said, what? He said, I have a stack of postcards, and anytime I see something good that anybody does, I send a postcard to their house. And guess what? Their spouse sees it, their significant other, their children. It's handwriting, and it says, you know, Matt, great job yesterday on that. I didn't think that could be done, but you, like, the families probably never hear about stuff like that, right? So the postcards have been a big hit. So those other 2 started doing postcards too. It's so easy, right? It takes 5 minutes. Sometimes it's the simple things. I mean, we have all the other platform, we have all that stuff, but the postcards have been very, very appreciated.
Mm-hmm. And because it sounds like it's not just, that's not only the sort of belonging, but it's the team building too, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's creating sort of these bonds, even when folks may be siloed or working alone in the way that you're describing. And of course, we know that career growth is a big part of feeling like you belong at a workplace, because if you don't feel that, you're gonna be like, well, I don't belong here, I'm gonna go somewhere else. But what are some of the ways that you not only make people feel recognized, but make them feel like we want you to stay here and we have a plan for you, most of all? Jacqueline, I'll give it back to you.
So that's a tough one, because with these generations, they don't plan to stay for long anywhere, right? And so again, it's about people managers to make, people need to know, like we in HR talk about, you know, high potentials and emerging leaders and all that kind of stuff, but they don't know they are, right? If they knew, and sometimes I'll say, you don't know this, but at least once a year, everyone who you work for sits around a table and says, Alexa, what do you think of her? Oh, she's definitely a future leader at this company. She takes responsibility, you know, whatever. She needs a little more work and, you know, socialization. They keep track of you to see who you are going to be the future leaders of this company, but they don't know that. Also, for example, I believe you have to name things. You can't assume that people know what you're talking about. So a couple of people said to me, you know, there's been no professional development on this team, and I don't know what to do about it. I said, what do you mean? You just got promoted. You just got a new job. You were just tapped to go and learn a whole new, that's professional development. But nobody said, their managers didn't say, this is about professional development for you. We're going to give you, you know, we're going to give you a new job or whatever, meet new people. All of that, but you have to name it.
Mm-hmm. And Alexis, I'm going to come to you because I know you've been at Wayfair. I mean, I know all of you have longevity in the roles that you're in, but I know that you're someone who's sort of grown up through Wayfair, right, as so to speak. What has kept you there? What made you feel like that was a place where you could grow?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to some of the things I said earlier about Wayfair's culture, but and even just what you were talking about, right? You wanna feel like you are learning and growing and developing, and that is something that I've been able to feel at Wayfair because I've been able to try new things, get expanded scope, earn promotions at certain points in my career, and that's a form of recognition. And so we tend to see that people stay at any organization, Wayfair included, when they feel like they have opportunities to grow and develop their careers. If you look at, for our engagement survey, we ask people about career development, and this is true not just at Wayfair, but that tends to be very highly correlated with overall employee engagement and retention. And so when people feel like they can develop and grow their careers, they want to stay at that organization. And if they don't, they're often going to leave. One of the top cited reasons for leaving Wayfair, and again, many other organizations, is career development. So it's super important, and it's always a challenge because it's hard to help people understand exactly what their career paths can look like, because at organizations that are rapidly growing or changing, career paths don't look like one way. They could look like a lot of different things. And people, what a career path looks like for one person might be different than for another person. Someone might be very interested in upward mobility. Someone else might be interested in a lateral move or a move that allows them to work in a space that they have no experience in because they want to make a career pivot. So all of those things are forms of career growth and development, and the organization needs to be able to support those.
Mm-hmm. So can I add to that? So I'm actually really passionate about that because I've been at Takeda for 16 and a half years, and I started off as an engineer in the lab, and then I moved into business operations roles, and I have moved across the business. So the reason people ask me a lot as well, how have you been here for so long? And it's because I've been able to find a career pathway for myself. A lot of that was through the connections that I made through our employee resource groups, because I've been very involved with that for over 10 years. However, we are implementing something at Takeda that we call Career Navigator. We've branded it Career Navigator, which is through Glint, and we've just piloted it, where employees will be able to upload their profile, and then Career Navigator will be able to match them to open roles and across the organization, or they put in what their career aspirations are, recommend training through our LXP platform. And so it's all being integrated, and it's going to be launched next year, but it's currently in the pilot. Like the first pilot has just finished, and they're collecting feedback on that. At some of our sites within our division of the company in global manufacturing and supply, in our small molecule operating unit, which has sites in emerging markets, mostly in emerging markets and in Europe, we also have something called career pathways, where for a manufacturing employee, sometimes it's very difficult to see how can you advance through the organization because you're a big manufacturing team reporting into a supervisor. And so our sites have worked very hard to map career pathways for employees. They have different ways of displaying it. At our site in Brazil, it's a map on the ground, on the floor. In some of our sites, it's up on the wall. In other sites, it's digital. And so employees are able to see, here's how I can grow my career at Takeda, and that's actually been really helpful with our retention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we've talked a lot about, you know, all the things that add to a great workplace culture, how you feel like you belong there, and what makes you want to stay. But you know, not every workplace culture is for everybody. So Matt, I'm wondering from you, how do you know when something either isn't a fit from you out the gate, or if something is starting to shift where you're saying, maybe I don't need to work here anymore?
You know, my friend Tasha Eurich, who's the author of the book Insight, for my money, the best book on self-awareness out there, there's a line in that book that really caught my attention, and she says, self-awareness is the meta skill of the 21st century. And for me, I was thinking about this question beforehand, and I just think all roads lead back to self-awareness, whether you're the manager managing those people, or you're the one who's thinking about it like something's wrong. Am I listening to what's going on with myself, with those other people? And I have to say, I was doing some focus groups for a client, a rather large governmental client recently. And, you know, one of the biggest problems is just people being so overloaded with stuff to do and manage and unable to sort of see what's going on around them. I mean, there were programs available to them that no one even knew about. Money available to recognize other people. Money to do development, so people leave feeling undeveloped, and there was actually an opportunity they just didn't. So presence in my life, in my work, in my role, in my marriage, in all of aspects of my life comes back to, am I practicing self-awareness? Am I doing what it takes, whether it's meditate, whatever it works for you? So I don't want to be one note about it, but I think it comes back to an intention to be practicing self-awareness so that you actually are in tune with that there's even something wrong. And then, of course, self-acceptance. If there's something wrong, then if I have self-acceptance, then I deserve to change it. And that's the other piece of it. So I guess, self-awareness and self-acceptance on the individual level.
Matt, I can't believe you're saying this, because I spoke with our CHRO this morning and I said, anything I should be saying that you want me to represent? And he said exactly what you just said. He said, just make sure that people are self-aware and that they accept themselves the way they are. And if they don't accept, then do something about it. But self-awareness and self-acceptance.
And how does one build that, right? Because that's not always a skill. That's one of those quote unquote soft skills, but they're really human skills. And those are the skills we all are going to need going forward. How do we create that for ourselves?
It helps to have a crisis in your life that makes you change.
Okay, so everybody go out and get a crisis if you don't have one already.
That's the big one. Everyone's going to have one. If you haven't had it yet, it's coming for you. And then being willing, and it's very humbling to open yourself up. I think my relationships in my life keep me accountable and help me see myself, because people who care about me are willing to tell me the truth. Hey, something's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that deserves a hand clap. Honesty is the best policy.
I love you too. Postcard coming your way. That feedback loop is so important. Mm-hmm. And if I'm listening, my wife is actually Japanese. We were talking about Japan. And so she doesn't say a lot of words, so she gives me feedback in nonverbals. I have actually learned how to read a mind, which I never thought I could do.
It might be just because, how long have you been married to her?
About 7 years.
Okay. I'm sure many people have spouses who could be like, oh, I know.
Yeah, you can read their mind.
I know.
That one took, but we're running out of time. But I just think being present is the key no matter what. So you're really dialed in with, whoa, what did that person just say? People are telling us we can't not communicate, but we can not listen. And it's hard to listen in a world that we live in right now. It's hard for all of us. So compassion is also key in that.
Mm-hmm. So we have about 2 minutes left here. And Deborah, hopefully we can squeeze a couple of you in as we wrap up. But Deborah, I do want to ask you, right? I mean, we've talked about how the individual needs to be self-aware. But what about managers? And when they're giving that feedback, how can you be honest while still bringing a certain level of care and empathy?
Right. I think that we've trained the managers in a couple of different things. I'm a member of a CEO group, and I actually brought the head of that, who runs the CEO group, in to train my managers. And one of the things we did was how we communicate, which is oftener. So we ask questions and we say, this is how you're making me feel, what is going on? And we have conversations. I had a conversation with one of my VPs yesterday. Something happened that I don't want to talk about, but I walked her through. She said, I want to handle this. Don't you, CEO, get involved and try to fix everything. I want to fix this. So I said, okay, let's talk about how you're going to do it, what we're going to solve, and how we can be a better group because of it. And I know that sounds really corny, but she's working very hard to not get me involved, basically. And so I think it's really important, and I'm sorry I'm talking so long, so that's okay.
Go ahead. You can
All right, so I think it's just really urgently important to teach your people how to communicate, the senior management team, so that we can have everybody have an open dialogue. And different ages make a difference too. I hate to say that, but it's true. And this group that came out of college and went through COVID is a very different and needy group for different reasons, and they need to be praised, and they need to know that they're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is a wonderful place to end, Deborah, and on time. Thank you. Thank you. Well, to Deborah, Matt, Amina, Alexis, and Jacqueline, I want to say thanks to each of you, also to Chris. Also to Chris and to everyone from day one, and to all of you for being present. And I hope that you've got a lot of things to take away. Sorry we did not give you a crisis, but I'm sure that there are plenty in the world for you to pick up. So thank you.
Thanks.